Welcome to the B2B protocol walkthrough. So this video is meant to give you a walkthrough of the B2B protocol that we've developed in Bureau since 2016. This document or this flowchart illustrates the flow and the parts of the overall protocol for how to, let's say, in a better way nurture, in a better way achieve predictability. And by the end of watching this video, you know how this protocol works so that you as well can implement this system so that you can see the results that has already been generated, which is like 1900 conversations in 9 months for a software company, like 150 booked prospects in 45 days. And it's designed for you to learn how to leverage LinkedIn as a platform to generate leads, generate meetings, and achieve predictability in pipeline, and through that grow the company. The beauty of this system is that operating this system just based on base costs is very, very low. It's less than $1,000 for up to about 8 or 10 full-time sales employees. So without further ado, I want to then dive into this. I'm going to go through every single part, take you through the flowchart. So this video might stretch a bit because I want to give enough detail to each part. But there is two things that we can start with. You can see that everything starts from the left side. So this is the very first component. This is what we call LinkedIn outreach. You've probably gotten invitation requests on LinkedIn yourself since 2018, maybe, as I have. But the essence is it's a mechanism to reach out and send a connection request, send a message, and everything is done in an automated fashion. There is the right way of doing it, there's the wrong way of doing it. Most people do it wrong. The next part is this one, which is the second, let's say, entry point into this entire flow. And that is through engagement posts on LinkedIn. And if you're seeing this video, it might be actually that you are in that category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the first one, and I'm going to take you through the process, and then I'm going to go into the second one, and then what we're going to do is that we're going to cover these two things at the very end. But this basically involves how to generate leads, how to get outbound, how to get inbound leads, how to follow up on them, what happens if they're booked a meeting with, what happens after the meeting, and how do you nurture leads over time. So the two get started. I mentioned LinkedIn outreach. LinkedIn outreach is a system and an approach that we've worked with and fine-tuned since 2016. And the essence is, when you are a B2B company, there are several ways for you to, as I get in touch with prospects, build a prospect database, generate leads, and all this. You have ads, you have inbound, you have SEO, you have outbound activities, you have attending network events and conferences, and then you have your networking and referrals. Of course, there are others as well, like offline marketing, like newspapers, PR, and these things. But the other ones are activities where you have control. You are in control over the, let's say, the cause and effect. LinkedIn is also a great tool. And I recommend, when I consult and I talk with a lot of B2B companies, is that I always recommend, if you do have an ICP that you can target, if you do have these things, it makes sense to reach out and do LinkedIn outreach. The very first thing to get started, and I'll go into it, and I can have a commentary as we go, is you have the automated campaign that starts with visiting the profile of the person that you want to get in touch with. So this is your target audience, it's your ICP, it's the avatar, it's the decision maker that you need to talk to. And this is the beauty of LinkedIn. Then you send an invitation to them, and then we have a check. If they accept, we can do what we call a CRM sync. And a CRM sync is where we take the public data on their LinkedIn profile, which is GDPR compliant and people are made public, and we sync that to our CRM. Then once that has happened, we have a wait function that then goes on to sending a message. This is the type of message where I like to call it the thank you message. So you have the invitation with a note to the connection request, and then they've connected. So we are then going on to saying a thank you, like, thank you, John, so much for accepting the connection request, blank. And that blank is what needs to be tailored to your company depending on what your goal is. This could be like having a question, giving an invite, asking feedback. There's plenty of ways to do this. If they do reply, then you're in the dialogue on LinkedIn. And that's when your salespeople can do what they do best, which is be charming, learn more about their prospect's company, and take the whole dialogue and book a meeting. If they do not reply, you have message number 2. So if they do not respond on the first one, we give one final follow-up message on LinkedIn, and this is more of a ping. It's a nudge. It could be, hey John, you might not be the correct person to talk to, or am I even barking up the right tree? Or I would really recommend or appreciate if you put me in touch with the person responsible for this. But you can do a lot of variations to this, but the essential one is that the message 2 is kind of like the ping / nudge. And the message 1 is the thank you. If they have replied, the question that we can do, or the system that we can set up, is that we can check if they have booked a meeting in 7 days after they connected. And that's where we come up in what we call the follow-up sequence, but I'm going to get to there in a moment. So as you can see, we have from the accept, what we then also start on the back end is that we start to trigger, like, have they replied in 7 days after they accepted? Yes or no? Because if they did, so this would be yes, and this would be no. If they did, again, you're in dialogue on LinkedIn. And this is where we then can set up a process where is a meeting booked in 14 days? Yes, then a meeting is booked. So then you've reached out, you're connected with someone, you reach out, you start a dialogue, your salespeople do what they do best, and a meeting is booked. Now the question is, what happens if they do not book? So if they do not respond within 7 days after accept, we have something that we call the follow-up sequence. The follow-up sequence takes the conversation from LinkedIn to email. And this is where we can do a lot of different things, because with email, we have a lot of power. And the email system basically has the ability to have an AI mail engine tied to it. Because if you reach out to a lot of people, managing your email inbox is time consuming. And what we then built for that is an email mail engine, where powered by AI that knows everything about your product, knows everything about the audience, that knows your ICP and absolutely everything, and how to engage in those discussions. And you can add that in, and it will manage the email inbox if some of the people that you're connected with, that you reach out on email, actually responds back. So the flow is a loop of 3. So you have the very first email. So if someone has connected on LinkedIn, they did not reply within 7 days or 14 days, or what frequency or timeline you want, you would send them an email. And this happens because we can sync the audience from LinkedIn to our CRM. And that first email could be something like this. Hi, John. I was reaching out to you on LinkedIn, but I guess you're a busy individual. So I wanted to reach out on email instead, because I had a proposal for you, or I had something that I would like to run by you. Something that is referring to the fact that you connect on LinkedIn, that you have something that you want to provide them with, or give them, or run by them. You don't want to say, hey John, do you guys look for development services? We can help you develop X, Y, and Z. Because that's a spam. A cold email has a sole purpose, or this is a lukewarm email, but the email has the purpose of engaging in a genuine discussion or dialogue and connection with the prospect and lead. And what we then do is that we have a wait. This could be, for example, 7 days. And then what we do is that we see, okay, did they reply to that email? Have they replied on LinkedIn? Or is a meeting booked? Because if any of these happen, we don't want to send the next email. Because that's where email number 2 comes in. because we want to be able to follow them up. We want to be able to basically provide value and have control. So if none of these happen, so they didn't reply on email, they didn't reply on LinkedIn, and a meeting hasn't been booked, we send email number 2. And email number 2 could be a bit more of a softer way. It could begin reintroducing more of the value, so more of the benefits or more of the call to action. And then you have the same loop again with email 3. But we never ever send more than 3 emails as a direct follow-up in the follow-up sequence to LinkedIn. If they do reply, so if you can see reply and that is a yes, reply yes, and reply yes, you're in dialogue on email. And this is where you have the opportunity to use the AI mail engine, or your salespeople and sales professionals and team could then handle their email inbox, as I assume that they already do, and do what they do best, which is again, nurture that relationship, book a meeting, and that's where the meeting is booked. So this is the email follow-up sequence that happens after you've connected with someone. So to summarize very, very quickly, you use the LinkedIn outreach tool to reach out, connect, and send messages on LinkedIn from your sales team's professional LinkedIn profiles. So it's personal, with the goal of engaging in a dialogue on LinkedIn, which then is to be taken to a conversation. If they do not respond on LinkedIn, we have the email follow-up sequence, which is pretty much an email nudge. So for the people that we find the email to, we can follow them up on email in a non-spammy, personal, and actually a genuine way. And if you're in dialogue on email, then again, the goal is to qualify and book a meeting with those individuals. So these are the 2 first steps. Now, you can see that I have something called a nurture sequence. I don't want to go into that yet, because I want to go into the booking system. So what happens after someone has booked? So if someone is booked, there's basically 2 things that you want to start with. You want to send a confirmation email and confirmation text, or SMS. Those are just confirming the meeting. They are confirming the date. And for example, for the confirming email, you want to have the link to Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, whatever meeting software you use, you want to have that in there. Then we wait 45 minutes. And this is where content comes into play. Because one thing that we want to do is that we want to nurture and have the audience and the people that we talk with in a meeting, to have those individuals consume as much content before the meeting as possible. The rule of thumb in marketing is that if someone consumes 7 hours of content, it is way more likely that they will convert than those that has not consumed those 7 hours of content. With that, we don't try to cram in 7 hours of content before the meeting. That would be a bit of an overkill. But we want to present them with some content that is valuable and tailored to the potential scenario that they're in. So you can see email content 1, content. So you can see there are several ones. And the purpose of these are to address the different core problems that your audience has. So let's say if we take the B2B marketing and sales and lead generation space, the things that stop a company from growing is bad lead quality, lacking lead volume. It is a automated process, so everything is manual. It could be conversion rates. It could be a lot of different things. And then I would then create one piece of content tailored to specifically addressing that one problem and coming with a solution. Again, by presenting a solution in email and a text, the prospect and lead doesn't necessarily know how to do it and execute on it. But we have this. Then we wait another 5 hours, because in the confirmation email, we actually give the lead a bit of homework. And that is, we want them to, quote unquote, self-qualify or self-segment by having them complete a form. So you can see that we have completed form, and this could be a very simple type form, Google form, paper form, jot form, some sort of online form that they could submit beforehand. And this is a form that has maybe 5 to maybe 7 questions about them, and their company and their current situation. It could be, where are you right now? What's your goal? What do you feel that is missing? It could be other questions that give you as a sales or give your sales team the details that would benefit in the meeting that is to come. If they have not completed the form, what we then do is that we send a follow-up sequence. So we send a follow-up reminder, and that's basically the process. What we then do is that we wait another 2 days, and what we then check is, when is the meeting? If the meeting is more than 1 day from this point on, and they have not completed the form, we send them another reminder about the form. The reason why we do this double is because our experience running this since 2016 is that the leads that actually are willing to spend time on submitting something before a meeting converge at a way higher rate than those that do not. The likelihood of someone actually showing and you avoiding a no-show when someone has submitted a form beforehand increases significantly. So the likelihood of actually completing a meeting by having forms and giving a nudge on those forms increases the likelihood of you having someone actually attend the meeting. So that's the immediate one. So confirmation email and SMS that basically tells them about the form. Then after about an hour, we'll give them the email with some value, so like addressing one of the problems, and then we follow them up on the form if they haven't submitted it yet. Now, this next part is what's interesting, and you've seen it. So once someone has booked, and let's say that they've submitted the form, so we do not follow up regarding the form. So there is a scenario here that they get the confirmation email, they submit the form, they get this email one, and the form is submitted before this check even happens. So if they have yes, nothing basically happens. And this one is the interesting part, and that is, how can we give the most possible value to a lead before the meeting without being pushy, by coming from a place of sharing value and having a logic where it dynamically alters the number of emails and the frequency depending on how long it is from the meeting was booked to the meeting is to be completed. So this is where we have the wait function. We check if the meeting is cancelled or rescheduled, and if it's not, so this is a no for absolutely all of these, then we send email number 2. Then we do the same one. So we wait. Is it cancelled? Is it rescheduled? No. Send email number 3. If it's then again not cancelled, not rescheduled, email 4. We go so on. And this is again, the number of emails here depends on personal preference. It depends on how aggressive you want to be. And it also depends on if you have the content or not. So in the beginning, I would recommend maybe doing 1 or 2. But as you go on, try to add a third one. See what the response like is. When someone jumps on a meeting, like ask them, like, did you get the chance to read through the emails that we sent you before the meeting? And if they say yes, okay, how was it? So you can dive into and do actual research in terms of the value. And the big benefit is that these emails serves as sales assets for your sales team. So if email number 1 was lead volume, I'm just taking that as an example, and email 2 is lead quantity, or quality, not quantity because lead volume is quantity, quality. What you then can do is, did you get a chance to read through the email about lead volume and lead quality that we sent you before the meeting? Yeah, I got to read about the volume and quality. Both of them were really, really good. Okay, so out of those 2, is any of those a issue or a problem or something you think could be better? Yeah, actually, I really like what you talked about in lead volume in terms of using this, that. And then you have already a gateway and an entry into a conversation to dive deeper into the root cause and root problems that they have. Again, it will empower your sales team. So that's why we use this email content before a meeting. Then we have the standardized follow-up. So a day before and an hour before, we send a reminder email and a reminder text. This is just, again, to reduce the likelihood of no-shows, especially if you have a large amount of meetings. Again, you don't need to send all of this. This is what we've tested. This is what we've seen. And by implementing something like this, you have at least a framework and a system to do this. And you see that how we have canceled and rescheduled as triggers. What we do have is that we have the meeting canceled and rescheduled system as well. So if a meeting is canceled, we, for example, in this case, we're using You Can Book Me as a booking system. Then that will be able to send a webhook. We can search for it in our CRM or sheet. We can update the lead to canceled. We can send the webhook to end charge, which sends all of the emails. We can add a tag that they're canceled, and then we wait. So this basically means that, okay, if someone is canceled, we ensure that we update the lead on all places. So both in the CRM and in the email system, so that they don't receive the other emails. If they have rescheduled, however, we do a bit of a similar thing. We find them in the CRM or sheet, we update the rescheduled, we send a webhook or data to the email system, in this case end charge, we add a tag, and then what we do is that we update the custom field for the data of the meeting. And this is again what then triggers in depending on how many of these emails are to be sent. So there is a system for what happens if it's canceled and what happens if it's rescheduled. Then after that, we have what we call the post-meeting system. But before I go into that, I want to do the very high level again and summary of the post-booking system. So basically, if you want to increase the show-up rate of meetings, you want to increase the conversion rates, you want to make it easier for the sales team, you want to have a booking system. And that booking system should achieve a couple of things. One, you should confirm. You should get them to submit the form beforehand so that they do a bit of homework and are more qualified, increase their engagement. And you want to send value emails and content emails so that they can consume content and it's easier for the sales team to refer to those and use those as, let's say, guiding topics for the conversation in the sales team or in the sales process. We also want to then have a system that automatically changes dynamically the process before a meeting if the meeting is canceled, and if the meeting is rescheduled, change the timeline and frequency of emails so that we're not spammy and they receive duplicates. So that's that. Then it's after the meeting. After the meeting, we want to be able to provide value. So there's a couple of scenarios here. The first one is, was the meeting completed? If the meeting was not completed, we want to enroll them in a no-show sequence. And I'm going to give you the introduction to that, but we're going to do these first. So the meeting was completed, yes. Then was the meeting 2 booked? Yes. So then you booked meeting number 2, and then here you have a way lighter sequence. You have the confirmation email. On booking, you have the confirmation SMS or text, and then you add it to your email system and the CRM. And then you have the reminders 1 day and 1 hour before. If the meeting 2 was not booked, like the question is, was it marked as lost? Yes. Okay, then it's the end. And we wait. If it was not marked as lost, we enroll them in the evergreen sequence, and we're going to come to that very shortly. If the meeting was not completed, so meaning they no-showed for the meeting, we want to have a no-show sequence. And the no-show sequence is basically we wait. So this is triggered by your sales team in the CRM, in the pipeline, mark them as no-show. Then they get the no-show email number 1. It could be something as simple as, hey John, I was on Zoom, I was on Teams at the proposed date and time for the meeting that we had scheduled, but you didn't show. I assume that something came up. Would you still like to go through with the meeting? And if they then reply, you're in dialogue and email, and you book the meeting, hopefully. Then what we actually want to do is what happens if they do not reply. So if they do not reply and we are not able to book a meeting with them, we want to be able to present them with value. So again, the content emails, what we can do with those is that we can create a video for all of the different parts. So lead quality, lead volume, conversion rates, latency, all of these different things that are addressing a specific problem that they have. And we can then have a check. Have they watched video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4, video 5? If not, send that particular email. This is not sending all at the same time, it's sending one. So if they have not watched video 1, we send video 1. And if they have not watched video 1, they will not receive any of these. And then we do a wait. We then check, have they then replied on email within the next 5 days after receiving those emails, or those emails with videos? Yes, okay, then you're in dialogue on LinkedIn, or dialogue on email. And then hopefully you're booking a meeting. If they do not reply to that, we send the email no-show number 2. So, hey John, a week ago we were supposed to have a meeting about to touch upon this. You didn't show. I again trying to follow up to see if you still want to do the meeting. If they do not reply to that, then they're basically off. But if they do reply to that, you're in dialogue on email. Hopefully you can book. If you're not able to book within 14 days, then we're getting to what we call the evergreen sequence. So the essence is, after a meeting is supposed to be completed, there's 2 branches, or actually 3 ways it could go. They could no-show, so then we have a way of actually following them up with one email. We nudge them with some value in a video, and then we follow them up again, like a final try to see if we can reel them in. Again, the process that we have is, or the process that most companies do, which makes this a bit untraditional, is that most people have a funnel that becomes narrower and narrower. What we actually have, so this is basically, people try to bring as many people through this small hole. The issue is that that's just like 3 to 5%, and very beautiful. The problem is that what happens to the remaining 95 to 97? Like, if you have these stages and you bring less and less people through, what do you do to nurture those 97% that is in this category that are not even ready to buy? And how we actually do it, and we're going to come to that in a moment, is that we have a very, let's say, narrow hole to get into, where the most qualified. And what we try to do in the very first segment is that we want to convert and generate cash. The next segment is then a question mark. And the question mark here is, we want to segment and we want to nurture those leads. So what then happens is that you've seen a couple of those evergreen sequence, and evergreen sequence, but that's not the very first step. So if we go all the way back to, you reach out on LinkedIn, you follow up on email, and you book the meeting. This is where we then have what we call the nurture sequence. And the nurture sequence is the very start of this. And here you can actually see that we have the same amount of emails as what we had in the follow-up before a meeting. This email sequence is something that we can call the nurture sequence. It is something that we can call the bootcamp sequence, but it is emails that we want to give someone if we do not book a meeting with them on email or on LinkedIn and through the discussion. So basically, the email with value that we send before a meeting, we want to be able to provide that to the leads that we weren't receiving a response from either on LinkedIn or email, and that we didn't book, so that we can present and give more value that hopefully will help us establish a level of credibility with the audience and with the prospects and leads. But the important part here is that we don't want to do it in a way that is spammy. And that's why we come with value instead of just pitching. But now we're getting to the evergreen sequence. And the evergreen sequence is a bit like a black box. So there are several things here that makes this interesting. One of the things that I've taught about 350 entrepreneurs is the concept of content stacking. And the concept of content stacking is, how can you at any time and any moment have so much content or ideas for how to spin up content that you will never run out of it, while not annoying your audience. Most companies, they use two types of content and angles for content when they publish online. It is either a call to action or social proof. Those are the only two people, what 95% of companies do. Like, buy from us now, or opt in here, do that, X, Y, Z, buy now, and see what our client says. This is a case study, it's a testimonial of clients. But these are only just two. If the only thing you see are call to action social proof, you're going to get annoyed at some point. Because imagine you see 25 call to actions and 25 social proofs. Like the variance between those two angles is so low that you reach maturity or you saturate the attention span of the audience. So what we want to have as well is that we want to have how-tos. We want to have PR. We want to have stories. And stories could be for the company. Stories. It could be methodologies. It could be frameworks. It could be other things. It could be questions, like engaging with the audience directly in the email or directly through the post and the content that you promote and create. There's several of these, and there's about 7 or 8, 9, and 10 different variants that we want to create content around. And this is where the evergreen sequence come in, because the evergreen system works as a loop. Imagine having 50 emails. All of those 50 emails some are call to action, some are social proof, some are how to, some are PR stories of the company, some are stories from the company, like the origin story, stories from employees, methodologies and frameworks you've developed, and questions directed to the audience to engage them. And those are put into the loop. If you have an email bi-weekly and you have 50, you have 2 years of an email loop that is going to loop again and again and again. The likelihood of someone remembering the very first email is very, very low, a year after or 2 years after. So the evergreen sequence work by one, we check if they have an evergreen booking tag. And this is a tag that is then given if through these emails they end up booking a meeting with a sales representative. If they do, then we have a wait, and that could be, for example, a 30-day wait period and grace period, so that we don't send them emails for at least a month after they've booked. Again, you can change this from 30, you can change it to 7, you can change it to 90. Again, depends on personal preference. But then you have the emails that goes into a loop. So you go to email 1, or you go through all of the emails, and then basically these are then looped around and around and around. What we then do have is that all of these emails have a UTM parameter in it, so that if they click a link to booking and they book a system or they book a meeting, is it an evergreen booking? Yes. Then we want to give them the evergreen booking tag, which then makes it so that they exit and have that grace period. And then we wait, and then we re-enroll them again. So the evergreen sequence is a sequence built to, let's say, never let them out of the flow. Have them always in the discussion, or always stay top of mind by sharing content that it's not super specific. It's not all of them have a call to action, but it is staying top of mind and nurturing them and making more and a higher percentage of the audience and leads that you have be aware of what you do, be aware of what you have, and find the stories and the things that you share to be valuable. This might sound very spammy, and bear with me. I've received, and once we've run this, and we've run with an email a week, not bi-weekly, and we've even had periods with more than one a week, we've had people come back to us to say, we've created a folder in our email inbox tagged Harold and Bureau, and the ones that we ran this with, and we bookmarked absolutely every email and put those into that folder. And we, on a recurring basis, go into that folder and read the different emails that has been sent, because it has been so valuable. And it was not spammy. It was not pushing. It was just providing content value and something that helped me think it through, handle a problem that I have, stuff like this. So the evergreen sequence is kind of like the final black box. It's the black hole that everyone basically is put into, And if you want to give them an off ramp, you can just have the question be like, do you appreciate these? Do you want to not receive them anymore? Then you can have the link in terms of how to unsubscribe or be removed from the list. But again, the essence here is you want to come off with value, and by coming with value, you don't piss the audience off. So that's the entire process. So if we zoom out, there's still one part that we need to go through, and it's this one. But to give the highlight from the beginning, you reach out on LinkedIn. You can book meetings from LinkedIn. If you do not, we follow up an email, and if we get a response, we book a meeting. Then you have the booking sequence, which is the confirmation email, confirmation SMS, and a follow-up with a form, and valuable content beforehand, and then the final reminders. Then, if they cancel, we want to make sure that everything is updated and they don't receive any more emails. If they reschedule, we want to change the timeline and time frame for what emails they receive and when they receive it. Then we have the post-booking system, which is, do they no-show? Okay, then it's a follow-up for the no-show. If they show, is meeting number 2 booked? Yes. Then you have the normal one, confirmation email, confirmation text, and reminders. If a second email or a second meeting was not booked, are they marked as lost, or is it just the wrong timing? And then you tag them. Cancel, no second meeting booked, and no response after no-show, all goes down into evergreen, so that they go through this loop. If we, through LinkedIn and email, do not book them, they go into this nurture sequence. And then after the nurture sequence, at some time, they go into the evergreen. Now, as in the essence of time, we're at 36 minutes. I want to then go through the final part and try to do it fairly quickly, because now you understand the grasp of it. So this one is, how can you then use LinkedIn as an organic inbound channel? The benefit of running the top one, so LinkedIn outreach, is that you grow your network on LinkedIn with people in the ICP, so the target audience that you have. So when you then share things on LinkedIn, the likelihood of then achieving increased exposure and reach is higher. So I have something that I call the organic loop automation, but we're not going to look at that in the beginning. So I'm just going to do this for now. So the very first one is that we have what we call a post hook, or post a hook post on LinkedIn. And a hook post is basically a post where you want to share something valuable, and people need to comment on that post to receive it. The benefit that it has is that we have a tool called Galaxy that has the ability to dynamically add all people that comment into an audience on that software. So what then happens is that if someone comments on the post that we have, we add them to that audience of Galaxy. We can then automate the art of visiting their profile, sending a connection invite. If we're not connected, if they do accept that, we can do a CRM sync, and then we can send them the message. So this is, as you can see, visit, connection, accept, CRM sync, and message. It's the same sequence as we had above for the LinkedIn outreach, but the trigger isn't that we found an audience. The trigger is that an audience has commented on our post. And this is where we then can do a couple of other things. So the very first one is that we want to then set up a trigger from the CRM sync to say, have they replied on LinkedIn? Or have they replied altogether? If they did not, we want to enroll them in transition sequence. So what you can see here. The transition sequence is basically a second sequence where we visit their profile, and then a few days later we send them a message. And this message is basically built on the topic that, hey, I sent you this resource a week ago. What's your number one takeaway? And if they reply in 10 days, we can then CRM sync them, and we're in dialogue on LinkedIn. So this is basically a process for, you publish content on LinkedIn that is valuable, people comment, we can sync them and send them the asset and resource on message. We follow them up 7 days after to engage in the dialogue on LinkedIn. And again, this is where you book a meeting, and the meeting is booked. If it's not booked, you enroll them in the nurture sequence. And the benefit is with the CRM sync is that we can do all of this on email as well. So if they do not reply on email on the message on LinkedIn, we can send them normal process on email. So the first email, for example, could be the, hey, we sent you the ask on LinkedIn. You didn't respond on LinkedIn, so I thought I could follow up on email to hear what your number one takeaway was. And then again, the same triggers. Did they reply on LinkedIn? No. Did they reply on email? No. Is the meeting booked? No. And then we can follow up with a couple of emails. Again, this might be a bit overkill depending on preference, but you can see the same system goes again. So the essence here is we want to then grow your network with the LinkedIn outreach. That increases the exposure you have from organic posts that have people comment to get access. And we then are able to follow up those individuals depending on if they commented or not automatically. And to give you some context, one post that I created for this was able to generate 655 comments. And the benefit then of this system is that to advertise on LinkedIn, it's about $150 CPM. So that's $150 to reach 1,000 people. That particular post reached 100,000 people. So that's 15,000 in saved ad spend. The next one is 605 comments. The benchmark for a lead in B2B is 20 to 60, or 20 to 100 actually. So if we estimate that a qualified lead is $40, then you can multiply and see that, okay, that's $24,000 in lead cost, just if you have a lead generation campaign that works really, really good. So the essence is that if you have both of these things work and play in tandem, the benefit could be tremendous. You could generate hundreds upon hundreds of leads that people come to you, they ask for this asset. And the good thing is that this post was actually for one of these 6. We have way more than 6, but the essence and the point comes through. Having that is very, very valuable. Now, to wrap it up, to make this even more interesting, what's going to actually happen is that you can put up this in an automatic loop. So you can create these 6 posts, these 6 assets that you want to have this hook post on for LinkedIn. You can set up a scheduler that every 30 days I want to publish one of them. I can then have a virtual assistant or an assistant in general. I can set it up so that once the post is posted, I send the link to that assistant. That assistant then creates a new campaign in Woloxy that then will trigger all of this automatically. So, and this is then organic. It happens automatically. Like if you have the people in place, you have the scheduler in place, all of these things could happen automatically. So that is, in a nutshell, the B2B protocol. And hopefully you've seen this as a tool that then will be able to not just grow your network, but have a proper follow-up process, ensure that people meet for a meeting, have the back end in terms of following up those that don't show, because having no shows in sales is the most excruciating thing, because you set aside time and you basically then have lost that time, and you need to try to figure out what to do with that time that you then got back. So it was partially wasted, and how to nurture the audience on the back end. So this is the number one system and model that I always recommend B2B companies to use. And hopefully by now you can see the potential in it. You learned something. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to add my LinkedIn. I'm going to add my email. And also, if you want to have a personalized walkthrough of this, in terms of how this could look, there should also be a link to a calendar to find a time to actually speak to me directly and go through this, either with myself or one of my partners in Bureau. But hopefully this was of interest. Hopefully this taught you something. Hopefully this gave you a lot of ideas. And it's quite a complex system. It takes a while to set up, but once you have it, all of the pieces empower the others. So with that, I would like to say a final one, that I appreciate you taking the time. This turned into quite a lengthy video, but we had to do it this in depth for all of these parts to make sense. And hopefully this was a valuable 45 minutes for you. So with that, I wish you a great rest of the day and take care.